airport as thousands of Americans and Afghan allies wait to be evacuated. President Biden is facing mounting pressure from lawmakers to speed up those evacuations. He's being criticized for the hasty departure of U.S. troops and the chaos that has unfolded over the past few days as a result. Our Roxana Saberi has left Afghanistan. She joins me now on the phone from Doha, Qatar. Roxana, we're glad that you're out safe, but please tell us, what was the scene like at Kabul airport as you were leaving?
Hi, Laura. Yeah, we are right now in Doha, as you mentioned, and we're on the move as I speak to you, so you might hear a bit of noise in the background. But the scene as we were leaving, well, we left in the middle of the night with around, we were told, 300 Afghans who were being evacuated. They were being airlifted out of Kabul by the U.S. military. We actually spent much of the day there at the military side of the base, which is being run by foreign countries such as the U.S. I also saw troops from the UK, Italy there, and they're all working to evacuate their citizens and vulnerable Afghans out of the airport. We saw many Afghans come to that part of the airport. Some couldn't make their way in. Those who could were being escorted and then being processed to the gates. A lot of them had just a small bag with them. They could only carry, very small items. Actually, one man I spoke to said he didn't want to carry a lot with him because there were so many Taliban checkpoints on the way that he didn't want to be questioned about if he was going overseas. He didn't want to raise any suspicions because he used to work for the U.S. military. He said he was a translator. So when they asked him where he was going, he said he was going home. But instead, he was going to the airport with his wife and 2 children to leave Afghanistan.
That was something that stuck with me as we see these images of the Afghans who were running after the military planes trying to get out. That was back on Monday, but none of them had anything with them. So you can imagine they just wanted to get out of there. No bags, no possessions to remind them of their family or Afghanistan, their home country. It was just about saving their own lives and leaving while the Taliban took over. You mentioned you spoke to that translator on your flight out of Afghanistan alongside 300 Afghans. Did you speak to anyone else about their plight and their experience getting to the airport and getting on a flight?
We spoke to a few other people. Not so much about their journey to the airport, although, we heard that it was quite a long journey. One man had to wait 2.5 years to get his visa to come to the United States with his family. But we did talk to other Afghans who were on the plane who were heading out because one had worked for the U.S. government, and another said he had worked for another, I think it was a French company, and he also was fleeing through the U.S. airlifting, the U.S. evacuation, but to go to another country. And I also talked to a couple kids who had never actually left their country, and I was asking them because they speak Dari, and it's a lot like Farsi. I was asking them, "Are you excited to go?" And they said, "Yes." And I said, "But what do you think about leaving your country behind?" And they said they're very sad, and they hope to come back one day. And they didn't know what to expect.
I can't imagine for those children just running with their parents, getting on the only flight that they can get on, and leaving their friends, their family behind. But hopefully they're finding safety. And Roxana, we are so glad that you are safe now in Doha. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura.
And for more on all of this, CBS News national security correspondent David Martin is here to discuss. David, what is the latest that you're hearing about the Taliban controlling access to the airport and the American citizens who are still waiting to be evacuated? Is there a plan in place right now to get them out quickly?
Well, the Pentagon says that the U.S. military commanders at the airport are actually in communication with the Taliban military commanders. So if that communication is working, then there is some coordination between the Taliban running the checkpoints outside the airport and the U.S. military running the airport. But the proof is going to be in the results. And how many people can they get out through that airport? The Pentagon says it can get from 5,000 to 9,000 people a day out of that airport. One C-17 transport plane flies in each hour, unloads the combat troops that it is carrying to secure the airfield, and then puts passengers on it and flies out. And you run that 24/7, and they estimate they can get up to 9,000 people out. The numbers you hear for American citizens out there in Afghanistan range from 5 to 15,000. So those are manageable numbers just in terms of flying people out, putting bodies on airplanes and flying them out. The hard part is getting to the airport through the city of Kabul or from outside the city of Kabul. What if you were an American citizen living in one of these provinces that fell last week to the Taliban? How do you get to Kabul? And then, of course, there's, on top of that, there are all these Afghans who once worked for the U.S. and who now are trying to get out for fear of retaliation. The Taliban is making all the right noises about no retribution, but after 20 years of war, I'm not sure how many people really believe that.
Yeah, everything that they're saying is being met with immense skepticism. But as Roxana was saying when she was speaking to that one translator who got out with her on her flight, that translator, when meeting the Taliban at checkpoints as he was making his way to the airport, said, "Oh, I'm just going home," so as not to raise any red flags. So I assume that's what a lot of people are going to be doing as they try to get from these provinces to Kabul, to the airport, is essentially lying for the sake of their safety. Yesterday, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan declined to say whether U.S. troops would remain in Afghanistan after August 31st if Americans and Afghan allies are still in the country. What have you been hearing regarding this? Is this self-imposed deadline going to mean that some Americans, if they're still there on September 1st, aren't going to be helped out?
Well, I think that's why they are unwilling to commit to what is going to happen on September 1st, because I think at the end of August, they're going to look and see how bad this looks. How many Americans did we get out? Are there a lot more Americans still waiting to be brought out? And I think then they're just going to have to make a judgment call whether they have made a good faith effort and done everything they reasonably could to get Americans and Afghans out of the country. As we're talking, I've seen an email from our State Department correspondent that says the State Department is going to double the number of consular officers working on processing all these visas. So there is just so much work to be done. And a lot of it's just plain paperwork, processing people for visas. And I think they're going to look up at the end of August and decide, where are we? How many people have we abandoned if we pull out, as the president has stipulated, on the 31st of August?
Another concern is how heavily armed the Taliban is. They're now in possession of a large number of U.S. military weapons and equipment. What additional concerns does this raise? And David, have you heard anything from U.S. officials about trying to get those weapons back?
Well, I think the day of destroying them with airstrikes is probably over. These are the equipment I've seen is mostly vehicles, a lot of weapons that they've captured from the Afghan army, in which, of course, the U.S. provided to the Afghan army. But the Taliban have never exhibited any interest in attacking anybody outside their borders. They just want to set up their Islamic emirate in Afghanistan. And of course, having all that equipment will make them more secure from internal revolt. But I don't think that they're going to go running across borders and invading other countries with that equipment. Now, of course, the real long-term problem in Afghanistan is not the Taliban, but it's Al-Qaeda. Mm-hmm. Is Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups like ISIS, which inhabit Afghanistan, are they going to be able to reconstitute themselves now? And if they do, will they have access to some of that equipment? And then that could start to get more dangerous for Americans. President Biden made this decision to pull out on a very sort of narrow grounds that whatever happens to the people of Afghanistan is not our problem. That's the government of Afghanistan's problem. Afghanistan matters to the U.S. because it was once used as a safe haven for the 9/11 attacks, and we have to make sure that that will never happen again. Now that the country has fallen so swiftly, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, for one, has said he will now have to reassess how long it will take the Taliban to Al-Qaeda to reconstitute itself. So these weapons are out there, and there are people with bad intentions who would like to get their hands on them.
All right. Well, David Martin, thank you so much for your analysis today and the last few days as this situation has been unfolding.
Sure thing.